Seats aren't available for non-family, so you'll have to stand. When I went to a restaurant to celebrate my grandson Eric's milestone, I found there wasn't a seat for me in the designated room. As I exchanged glances with the relatives who arrived at the same time, Olivia, the wife of my eldest son Jacob, threw a shocking statement at me. I felt a rush of anger, but a tap on the shoulder from my brother Patrick calmed me down. I said, "I guess we should head home then," and to my surprise, everyone immediately responded with yes to my question. We made a U-turn on the spot. Despite hearing shouts and the loud noise of breaking dishes behind us, I ignored them and headed home, where I immediately took a certain action. My name is Kelly. I'm a 51-year-old office worker for a company that runs multiple restaurants. Although I'm officially listed as a store advisor, I mostly work from home. This is partly because I was born with a handicap in one leg. I don't use a wheelchair, but I can't walk without a cane, making me hesitant to go to crowded downtown areas or use public transportation. Embarrassingly, I don't visit the restaurants my company operates very often. Of course, I know this isn't good, but since losing my husband Jack suddenly to illness 3 years ago, my life has felt empty. Now I live alone in a smaller condo arranged for me by my brother Patrick. I gave the condo where I lived with Jack to my married son and his wife about 2 years ago. Some people ask if I'm lonely, but when weighing the freedom of being alone against the loneliness, the appeal of living freely wins out. Part of this is because my relationship with my son's wife Olivia is terrible. Olivia is 10 years younger than my son Jacob, currently 25. She is stylish, beautiful, and was popular as a college student model while attending a prestigious university. I've heard she appeared on TV several times. She was expected to become a news reporter with the title of Miss University, but she got pregnant with Jacob's child during the summer of her junior year, and they had a shotgun wedding. At first, she took a leave of absence from college with plans to return after giving birth, but she suffered from severe morning sickness and her health got worse. Olivia worried that her beauty would be ruined and threw a tantrum, saying, "I don't want to be seen in public looking like this," and dropped out of college. At the same time, she became irritable over her uncontrollable physical condition and started behaving hysterically towards my son Jacob. "Mom, please, no matter what I do, thinking it's for the best," Olivia just screams and rejects everything. "The house is a mess, and it's bad for the baby's prenatal environment. I need your help," begged Jacob. So my husband and I decided to live with our son and his wife in the large condominium we had bought, intending to live there until we died. However, living together turned out to be challenging as Olivia treated me like a servant with her haughty attitude. "Don't dawdle, bring me my smoothie and crackers to bed quickly. Haven't I told you numerous times how sick I feel if I wake up with an empty stomach because of my morning sickness?" she would yell. And when she wasn't yelling about that, she'd scream, "Why are you washing my clothes with your old hag's clothes? No matter how expensive the fabric softener is, it won't keep the old hag smell from transferring to my clothes." Seeing enough, Jack would scold her firmly. Is it's common sense in this house to harass a pregnant woman? But she would just snap back. Even when Jack suggested that Jacob talk to her, Jacob would say, "It's impossible." Nothing makes sense to Olivia right now. "I wish you could just deal with it, Mom," laughing it off. As infuriating as it was, the fact that Olivia was pregnant made it so we had no choice but to endure her behavior. Had Jack been his usual self, perhaps he could have taken a firmer stand against Olivia and Jacob. But looking back, Jack's body was probably already being slowly ravaged by disease at that time. Olivia had cluttered Jack's study and living room, which should have been his places of relaxation after hard work, with her beauty devices, leaving no space to rest. Even trying to soak in the large bathtub we had ordered to relieve his fatigue was impossible. "Taking a bath with that old bugger gives me the chills. Just use the shower stall instead," she would say. I faced such verbal abuse, Yet Jack would say, arguing with those two just tires me out more, deciding it was best to endure it himself. Seeing Jack's attitude, Olivia and Jacob, instead of reflecting, escalated their tyrannical behavior even further. As I busily managed the household chores, dragging my ailing leg around, they paid no mind. "I never want to end up like that disgraceful old hag, no matter how old I get," she said, insulting me to the visiting beautician while pointing at me. The beautician was at a loss for words at the sheer nastiness of their comments, but Olivia didn't care. "We really wanted to hire a younger servant, but you know how hard it is to find someone reliable these days, right? So we settled," she declared. Even as these words were spoken, I continued my chores in silence, my leg aching and my heart full of anger towards Olivia and Jacob. As these days went on, Olivia's due date arrived, and she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Holding his first grandson, named Eric, Jack teared up a bit when the tiny hand tightly grasped his finger. Seeing this, I nearly cried myself. The innocent smile of the baby made me want to wash away all resentments and negative feelings. But that thought was short-lived when suddenly I received news that Jack had collapsed at work. Panicked, I rushed to the hospital while trying to contact Jacob on his mobile phone, but it remained unread with no return call. Reluctantly, I asked the company to contact him on his work-issued mobile phone, but that too was in vain with no response. Hoping at least to let Jack see his grandson Eric, I contacted Olivia's mobile phone. I asked her to bring Eric to the hospital. "I'm in the middle of a hair treatment at the salon, so it's impossible," she laughed and refused. "Then I'll come to the salon to pick up Eric myself." Do you really think I'd entrust a baby to an old hag who can barely walk with a cane? With that, she hung up the phone. Still, I didn't give up and kept calling Olivia and Jacob's mobile phones. But in the midst of this, the operating room light went off. Then the doctor came out and informed me that Jack had just passed away. My memories of the time that followed are a complete blank. All I can recall is a hazy scene, as if viewed through frosted glass. After the funeral, which took place amid this haze, I came down with the flu. "Olivia, the baby might catch it, which would be terrible," she exclaimed dramatically and told me to leave the house immediately. Already emotionally damaged by Jack's sudden death and physically weakened by fever and cough, I had no energy left to argue with hysterical Olivia. Barely managing to get dressed, I left the room but collapsed in the elevator hall entrance. Thankfully, the concierge called an ambulance, and I was rushed to the hospital. According to the doctors, I was on the verge of pneumonia. Later, my brother, his wife, and my nephew heard about my condition and took care of everything. "There's no need to visit the hospital. She's been admitted, she's safe, and it would be terrible if the baby caught something," Jacob and Olivia said, not even bothering to visit. Outraged by their attitude, my nephew and his wife suggested I stay with them for a while instead of returning to the condo, where I'd just be exploited by Olivia again. Returning to the condo would mean resuming a servant-like existence before even regaining my strength. However, staying at my brother Patrick's house, where my sister-in-law's parents lived, was not an option due to infection prevention concerns. My nephew's offer was a welcome one. Deciding to accept their kind offer, I planned to first return to the condo to retrieve Jack's photos and personal items left behind. My nephew's wife, Helen, who was worried about the situation, decided to come with me. When we visited the condominium for the first time in about a month, we found it in a terrible state. What is this mess? Dirty glasses and dishes were piled up, and the garbage disposal was clogged. The living room was no different, with delivery food containers scattered everywhere. The bathrooms and bath were in a dire state as well. I wondered how they could raise a baby in such filth. As Helen and I stood there in disbelief, Olivia, apparently already drunk though it was just past 3:00 p.m., returned with a couple of friends. Noticing us standing in the living room turned into a garbage house, Olivia looked surprised for a moment, but then quickly put on her usual smirking face and said, "So you're finally back. Then get to cleaning this room right away." It got all messy because the old hag slacked off. Helen was furious at this brazen attitude. She quickly approached Olivia and said, "How dare you speak to Jacob's mom like that after all she has done for you? And you just kicked her out the moment she got the flu." But Olivia and her friends just laughed it off. Birds of a feather flock together. Friends of unreasonable people are unsurprisingly unreasonable themselves, they said. Then, as if they had a great idea, they added, "Why don't you just leave for good? This place is going to be Jacob's through inheritance anyway. The old hag can just go back to her parents' house." As Helen grew even angrier, I somehow remained calm. Considering their outrageous behavior so far, it was only a matter of time before Olivia and the others would try to drive me out. There was no reason for me to stay any longer with such unpleasant people, so I called Noah to ask for help, and we managed to move out all my personal belongings that had sentimental value that day. Still, when I looked back at the condominium for the last time, the memory of deciding this house would be where I'd die and Jack's smiling face when we made that decision brushed my heart. I'm sure Jack would understand this decision, I felt certain. After that, I moved into a condominium near my parents' home that Patrick had arranged for me and returned to my job, which had been on hold since before Jack passed away. I also adopted a rescue cat, which I couldn't have before due to Jack's allergy, and started living with it. Though Jacob and I work at the same company and see each other when I go to the office, we hardly ever talk. However, one day I received an unusual message from Jacob. Curious about the sudden contact, I read the message. It was about planning a milestone celebration for Eric at a restaurant this coming weekend. It seems Olivia has invited a large number of guests, including her parents, relatives, and friends. "The balance will be off if no one from our side of the family attends," he said, wanting to invite me and the relatives. "Why don't you ask Jack's side of the family then?" I suggested, but it seems they had already refused. Indeed, Jack's relatives live quite far away, and it's not a distance easily traveled back and forth. Moreover, today is already Friday, and there's hardly any time to prepare to leave the house. It's understandable that they refused. I was about to refuse again when Jacob, sensing my hesitation, said, "I'm sorry for everything that's happened. For Eric's sake, could you consider our request?" Though I was indeed angry with Jacob and Olivia, Eric himself is innocent. Remembering how happy Jack was about Eric's birth, I considered it. I didn't want to spoil the celebration. After hanging up and giving it some thought, I decided to attend and sent Jacob a message to let him know. On the day of the celebration, my brother and his wife, my nephew and his wife, my uncle and aunt, their children, and other relatives gathered in front of the restaurant. Helen said, "I'm here today, not for that couple, but for Kelly." While calming her down, we were led to the room, the largest in the restaurant, with low tables and chairs. This setup would be difficult for me with my mobility issues, so I asked the staff for a chair that was a bit taller. However, Olivia interrupted. "There's no extra seat, so just stand," she said loudly with her arms crossed. Seeing Olivia's smirking face, I felt more dumbfounded than angry, wondering how she could be so mean even now. Then, impulsively, I called out to my relatives, "Shall we go back home then?" Without hesitation, they all responded, "Yes." The guests on Olivia's side became unsettled by this. Olivia's parents came forward, apologizing to me and my brother and his wife, while hurriedly scolding Olivia. But Olivia, scolded in front of her relatives and acquaintances, became angry and started throwing anything she could get her hands on, like vases, framed pictures, and dishes. Screams, shouts, and the sound of things breaking filled the room, but we left without paying any further attention. Once the relatives and I had left the restaurant, Patrick and I decided to hold a strategy meeting in preparation for what was to come. The company where I, the late Jack and Jacob worked was originally built by my grandfather. It's a family-owned business where our relatives own more than half of all shares, with my real brother Patrick currently serving as the CEO. Jack was Patrick's close friend since college and joined the company at Patrick's request after graduating. He married a woman who was a clerk there and had a son, Jacob. But after a long illness, his wife passed away when Jacob was in the 8th grade. Patrick, seeing Jack juggling work and home life alone, suggested I marry him, probably concerned about my future due to my disability and lack of social connections. Initially hesitant, I was swayed by Jack's words. "I'm a single father with a child, but I intend to take good care of you. Would you become part of our family?" Jacob, who became my stepson, neither showed hostility nor warmth towards me, his new stepmother. Believing it was unreasonable to expect more from Jacob so soon after losing his mom, I resolved to do my best as a stepmother when Jacob was about to graduate from college. "I want to work at the same company as Dad and Mom," Jacob said, which moved me to tears. However, this peaceful period ended when Jacob had a shotgun wedding with Olivia. After living with Olivia for a while, I couldn't ignore her domineering behavior and decided to have Jacob firmly speak to his wife. I waited for Jacob in the company's underground parking lot, but instead of seeing him alone, I saw Jacob with his arm around a married colleague, unaware I was standing just a pillar away. They were getting intimately close. The shock was enough, but then Jacob told the woman, "What if someone sees us here? We'd both get fired." She confidently replied, "I won't make such a mistake, and even if my affair gets exposed, the company can't fire me. After all, I'm the president's step-nephew." Unaware of my shocked state, Jacob continued, "My real mom was just a country girl, but my stepmother, even if just in name, is the company's executive vice president and the granddaughter of the founder. So she owns a significant share of the stocks and assets. When she passes, all of that will be mine." Then he drove off with the woman. Overwhelmed by what I had just heard, I returned home, unable to tell Jack. Replaying Jacob's words in my head, I gradually understood why Olivia always spoke so disdainfully of me and why Jacob never reprimanded her. It was as if peeling back layers to reveal the truth. Olivia likely received a similar explanation from the beginning of their marriage. I'm just a stepmother after all, and they believe I'm merely a tool they can treat however they please until they inherit the estate. Both Jacob and the grandchild yet to be born feel they are entitled to everything. But there's a truth neither Olivia nor Jacob understands. In reality, Jacob and I haven't gone through an adoption process. Legally, Jacob is nothing more than Jack's stepchild with no right to inherit my estate. Needless to say, for Patrick, being the CEO, Jacob is nothing more than a step-nephew, if even that. Recovering from the shock, I immediately consulted with Patrick, Noah, and Helen. Following their advice, I took steps at the City Hall to ensure no unauthorized adoption could take place. Additionally, in case of any eventuality, I arranged to entrust the management of my personal assets to a lawyer, a process that was nearly completed when Jack passed away. Jack's own estate, having been mostly spent on his first wife's illness, consisted of little more than savings and life insurance. I quickly renounced my inheritance. The reason the condominium wasn't discussed during the inheritance talks is because it was never part of the estate to begin with. It's frightening how greed can blind people. Jacob and Olivia, thinking the condominium was Jack's, probably rushed to kick me out after I renounced the inheritance. I backed down quietly, not just because I wasn't in the best of health, but also because I pitied young Eric and didn't want to disrupt his living situation drastically. But this time, I've reached my limit. I originally intended to file for an eviction due to illegal occupancy of the condominium during the milestone celebration, so I promptly began the process with my lawyer. Olivia's parents dragged her to the company to apologize. We were told by Olivia that we shouldn't visit because she needed to get along with the family of the person she married. that the birth and everything would be managed by Jacob's family, since an heir is being born, and we took her word for it. We had no idea things had come to this. We're truly sorry. No sooner had they been let into the living room than they apologized over and over, but it was too late for regrets. Hearing the commotion, Jacob also came running. I had no idea my wife could be this unreasonable. I truly am sorry for what I've done to Mom, he said. But when Olivia started crying, he said to her, "We're getting a divorce. Take the kid and get out of that condominium." The look he gave me, almost growling, truly sent shivers down my spine. Seeing my reaction, Patrick looked at Jacob with a cold gaze and said, "You know that store is part of our company's chain, right? Considering the fuss you've made, you'll both be paying for the damages. As for you, stay home until you receive an official summons from the company." He then firmly kicked everyone out of the reception room. Afterward, Patrick began preparations to fire Jacob, consulting the company's legal advisor right after the milestone celebration incident. He was furious, saying, "Not only is Olivia's disgraceful behavior appalling, but Jacob's negligence in letting her run wild is just as bad. They even destroyed store fixtures and decor. Firing him is only natural, right?" Though he was initially adamant about firing him immediately, the other executives calmed him down, explaining that a disciplinary dismissal made in anger could disadvantage us in a lawsuit. So we turned to a law firm known for its capable lawyers. True to their reputation, they did an excellent job providing indisputable evidence that was more than sufficient to fire Jacob. 2 weeks later, Jacob, temporarily relieved from house arrest, was summoned to the head office meeting room, seemingly prepared for his dismissal. Perhaps he had gathered some inside information. Despite arriving with a lawyer, the sheer number of attendees overwhelmed him. As Patrick, sitting at the center of the board, began, "It goes without saying why we've called you here today. Your dismissal has been decided." Jacob braced himself, clenching his fists. "Mr. Jacob Miller, you are hereby dismissed." Patrick, acting as president, began reading the notice of dismissal to Jacob. His lawyer immediately objected. "My client admits to the troubles with his stepmother Kelly, but insists that connecting this to his dismissal is wrongful termination." A voice rose. Glancing at Jacob beside him, he seemed quite pleased, nodding in agreement. "There's no excuse for my ex-wife's rudeness at the recent milestone celebration, but that was a private matter. Isn't it wrong to fire me over it?" he argued. Then, conspicuously placing a voice recorder on the desk, he said, "I'm also prepared to report this as harassment to the media, if necessary," with a smug face. Hearing this, Patrick and the other executives remained silent. Jacob mistook their silence for victory. "You're aware of the public backlash against companies that violate compliance, right? Are you sure you want to fire me knowing what will happen?" he provoked further. At this point, Jacob's lawyer, not showing the expected signs of disturbance, but rather a hint of a smirk, seemed puzzled. Yet Jacob, ever so confident, failed to notice. Patrick then asked in a deeper voice than usual, "Oh, so you wish to continue working with us? That's a hard pass. However, if you wish for me to leave the company amicably, a certain amount of money as a settlement would be necessary," Jacob said, leaning forward on the desk with a smirk as if to challenge the surrounding executives. But in the next moment, laughter erupted spontaneously from everyone present. Some were even laughing so hard that tears formed at the corners of their eyes. Taken aback by their reaction, Jacob quickly turned red and began cursing foully. His lawyer frantically tried to calm him down. "The dismissal notice naturally includes the reasons for dismissal. I'll explain them now, and if you have any objections, we can discuss them afterward," Patrick declared, his presence overpowering Jacob and his lawyer into silence. Both sat down. Then a group in dark suits stepped forward, bowed slightly, and turned on the electronic blackboard in the center of the meeting room. Immediately, the screen displayed screenshots of pages where wine exclusively imported for group participating restaurants was being sold on an online marketplace. Next, the screen showed an enlarged photo of the wine seller's icon. The moment it was displayed, Jacob stood up quickly. "This isn't me," he exclaimed in desperation, turning pale, and for good reason. The photo used for the icon was a cropped selfie of Jacob. The screen neatly displayed the original photos alongside an image match rate of 101% written in red. Facing the lawyer, still unable to grasp the situation, a man from the group of dark suits stepped forward, introducing himself as part of the law firm hired by the company. "Let me explain the reasons for the dismissal notice. The reasons include embezzlement, harassment, undue pressure within the workplace using his executive position, leaking confidential company information, unauthorized absences, tardiness, loafing, and damaging the company's reputation through inappropriate use of a company car," he explained smoothly. He further added that the company's legal and accounting departments had been secretly investigating rumors of the wine, supposed to be sold exclusively in stores, being traded online. In the process, they identified the source account and, collaborating with the police and other relevant parties, discovered that the account was linked to Jacob's online banking account. Additionally, the inventory management department uncovered the existence of double books. Upon questioning, several employees confessed that they had been coerced into participating in the illegal activities by Jacob, who implied they would be fired if they did not comply. As this explanation unfolded, Jacob was sweating profusely, but his complexion turned even paler at the next images displayed. It was a video, seemingly taken secretly with a mobile phone, capturing Jacob as he subjected female interns and temporary staff to sexual harassment and unbearable words. Jacob's lawyer, standing by, couldn't take his eyes off the repeating video, mouth agape. Next shown were images of customer information meant for our company being sold to a rival company, and a USB drive containing original recipes alongside an envelope bearing the name of the rival company's legal counsel. Seeing this, Jacob's face turned from pale to ashen, and his hands trembled on the desk. Our lawyer continued without hesitation, explaining why the USB was transferred from the rival company. Actually, suspicions about the source of this confidential information had arisen even before it was utilized. Upon rechecking the acquisition method, it was found that an employee of the rival company had obtained it from Mr. Jacob Miller in exchange for a significant amount of cash, he explained. The rival company quickly dealt with the involved employee and returned the data to us, along with documents clarifying the factual situation. Jacob's lawyer, taken aback by the continuous revelation of Jacob's misdeeds, listened in stunned silence. However, our lawyer concluded with, "While it might seem superfluous to mention now, all these illegal activities have already led to the filing of criminal complaints. Perhaps instead of discussing settlement money, you should be preparing for a criminal defense," he said with a chilling laugh. Jacob's lawyer turned red-faced. "I've heard nothing of this from my client. I cannot represent him under these circumstances. I resign," he exclaimed, glaring at Jacob before storming out of the room. Left alone, Jacob's initial bravado disappeared, and he slumped in his chair. Before he knew it, the women he had harassed in the video lined up in front of him. "We will be filing for damages as well," they firmly declared. Adding insult to injury, our lawyer continued, "Moreover, it has been confirmed through social media posts that you've been unfaithful with multiple women using company resources, even during work hours, and engaged in inappropriate actions in public. The company will, of course, include these actions in its claims for damages. So please be prepared for that," he stated, speaking pleasantly but with no smile in his eyes. Jacob finally collapsed from his chair, sitting on the floor in defeat. As Patrick and the lawyer had declared, Jacob was swiftly dismissed for misconduct. In the investigation that followed, Jacob, who was interrogated for embezzlement, tried to negotiate a settlement to avoid a prison sentence. However, finding a willing lawyer proved difficult, and he struggled to even pay the retainer fees. Eventually, he managed to cover the lawyer fees and compensation payments using the inheritance from his father, avoiding jail time for embezzlement. Yet, unable to prepare for the compensation claims for leaking confidential information, the emotional damages claimed by the women, and the defamation lawsuits, Jacob found himself buried in debt. Olivia, understandably furious at being quickly discarded by Jacob for his own protection, filed for asset division, damages, and child support. In a defiant stance, Jacob demanded, "Then let's have a DNA test for the child," prioritizing the investigation of paternity over financial concerns. Confidently agreeing, Olivia was shocked when the results showed the child wasn't Jacob's biological offspring. Investigations by a detective hired by Jacob revealed Olivia had multiple partners at the time of their shotgun marriage, one of whom was the biological father, disproving any parental relationship between Jacob and the child. However, legally, Eric was still considered Jacob's child. Knowing he couldn't escape from the obligation of child support, Jacob initiated mediation to confirm the absence of a parental relationship. While a lengthy resolution was expected, the public exposure of Olivia's turbulent private life in court was something her parents wanted to avoid at all costs, leading to an explosive reaction. "Stop bringing shame upon us. Enough with your antics," they demanded, forcing Olivia to withdraw all claims for asset division, damages, and child support. Then Olivia, for reasons known only to her, demanded of Zachary, "You're the father of this child, so you should acknowledge paternity and pay child support." The biological father of her child, Zachary, who was married, refused to acknowledge his responsibility. Zachary was afraid his wife would find out, so he offered to pay some child support. But Olivia was not satisfied. She took the child and confronted Zachary at his home while he was away. "Don't you think it's terrible that your child and mine, sharing the same father, aren't acknowledged and don't receive proper child support?" she boldly stated. Zachary's wife, caught off guard by this revelation and already dissatisfied with her husband, promptly divorced him. She transferred all desirable assets, including a new house, savings, and stocks, into her name before kicking Zachary out with nothing. Initially, Olivia smirked at Zachary's divorce, thinking she could be the next wife. But upon learning he had lost all his assets and was ousted from his father-in-law's company, becoming unemployed, she quickly withdrew. Despite the cause being his own infidelity, Zachary felt his happiness had been destroyed and blamed Olivia. "All of this is her fault," he said. Ever since then, he has been relentlessly pursuing Olivia wherever she hides. Terrified by his obsession, Olivia's parents, to avoid collateral damage, took in only their grandson Eric and disowned Olivia, kicking her out of their home. Left with nowhere to go and no one to turn to, Olivia resorted to night work to support Zachary, now a drunk and unemployed, as I was informed by a detective I had hired for a follow-up investigation. Meanwhile, Jacob, after all the trials had concluded, was left with a mountain of debt and alimony payments. A claim for me for the restoration costs of the condominium seemed to be the final blow. Trying to make a comeback proved futile as he couldn't find stable employment and resorted to juggling short-term jobs, inevitably falling behind on repayments. There was a time when he possibly couldn't afford a mobile phone and called from a public phone, pleading, "Please, I need help," but the call ended in silence after I remained quiet. Rumors suggest he was last seen being taken to a work site by barely legal debt collectors, but his whereabouts since then remain unknown. As for myself, taking this experience into account, I've become more actively involved in work. I used to think of myself as a decorative executive, a burden to my family, contributing nothing. However, during this ordeal, the company's female employees encouraged me. Even with accessible stores, its true usability can't be known without directly asking the users. Kelly, you could surely bridge that gap. Have more confidence in yourself. Getting more involved in on-site work made me realize I had become a pro at finding reasons for why I can't do this or that's impossible. Regretting not realizing this sooner, I'm now 51 with 9 years left until retirement. Rather than mourning the irretrievable past, I'm determined to make the most of these next 9 years. My current goal is to earn an extension of my retirement from Patrick and our relatives, and to report this achievement to Jack, who has passed away. Families often have conflicts or financial problems, but there are also families who manage to stick together and make it through everyday life. It's pretty clear which one is happier, don't you think? My name is Rachel. I've been called an oddball since I was a child. I don't know what's different about me. I just know people say I'm different. Being called different isn't the problem. The real issue is being ignored by my own parents. This led to a lonely childhood for me. I've always been sensitive to people's emotions and can somehow understand what they're thinking. I don't know why I can do this. It's not like I can always see or feel it, but it's as natural to me as moving my hand or breathing. I found it strange and couldn't understand why others couldn't do the same. There was a time when I felt a bad vibe from a colleague my father brought home from work. I warned my mother to be careful with that person, but she didn't listen. Later on, that colleague tricked my father into signing a contract as a guarantor for a loan. Although my mother didn't take my advice, when my father stepped away from the table with his colleague, I told him, "Dad, something is telling me that the word joint is dangerous. I don't know what joint means, but please be careful." So my father hesitated and refused to sign as a joint guarantor. Thanks to that, when my colleague went bankrupt and couldn't repay the debt, my father was able to avoid taking on all the debt. Another day, when I was shopping with my mother, I felt a wave of discomfort coming from behind us. When I turned around, I felt this bad feeling coming from a man wearing sunglasses and a hat. I said, "Mom, let's take that side street." I grabbed my mother's hand and moved to the side street. My mother was confused and asked what was wrong, but just as we moved, we heard someone shout, "Thief," from the street we had been on. The man with the bad vibe had snatched a woman's purse and ran off. The woman fell and got hurt badly. If we hadn't moved to the side street, the man's target would have been my mother. Things like this happened often, and people started to think I was strange and mysterious. My parents began to avoid me, and I felt lonely and isolated. What seemed normal to me was not normal to others. I started keeping my thoughts to myself. I stopped expressing my feelings because I knew normal people don't feel what I feel. If I didn't say anything, they wouldn't think I was weird. I would just be like a normal kid. I have a sister, Julie, who's 4 years younger than me. Unlike me, Julie is a regular kid. As the years went by, I became more withdrawn, but Julie just got cuter and more charming. It was clear who everyone preferred. Our parents started to favor Julie over me. They would say, "Julie is such a lovely girl, but Rachel seems to be a bit on the darker side." They noticed I had become less odd lately, but still thought I was different. What they called odd was me not talking about things only I could sense. It was my way of dealing with the world. I was tired of how this ability of mine was torturing me, so I tried hard to suppress it. I wondered if my attempts to hide myself and appear normal were making me seem abnormal, or if once labeled as the odd kid, that image just couldn't be erased. I grew up without much love from my parents. On the other hand, Julie received all the love, including what should have been mine. Julie, who was spoiled and pampered, sensed our parents being cold and distant toward me. She started to look down on me. "I don't like being around you. Your gloominess rubs off on me. I'm so cute, but your loner image brings me down." Julie started to insult me whenever she got the chance. Our parents lightly scolded Julie, but they never seriously tried to correct her. When I was in 8th grade and Julie was in 5th grade, she was scouted by a talent agency on the street. I knew it. It's because I'm cute. They said I could even appear on TV, Julie said, pleased with herself. She started dreaming big, and our parents didn't seem entirely against it. You should calm down and think carefully. I sensed something shady about this. I spoke up, expressing the intuition that I had long suppressed because I didn't want Julie to get into trouble. Julie, who didn't know about my unique ability, said, "What's your problem? Are you just jealous because you're not cute and nobody approached you? Don't say weird things and stop interfering with me." She seemed furious. Even my parents, who knew about my ability, either forgot about it or were too excited about Julie standing on the glamorous stage. They sided with Julie and criticized me. After that, I resolved to remain silent again. I told myself that there was nothing good in saying unnecessary things. One day, a student teacher came to my junior high school. He was a male college student who graduated from the school and wanted to be a physical education teacher. As he shared his dreams about education and gave a strong greeting, the teacher and students, especially the female students, were charmed. When he responded cheerfully to the girls' excited cheers, I sensed a dark aura from him. I had always vowed to hide my unique abilities, but seeing my classmates potentially in danger, I decided to break my self-imposed rule. I chose a teacher who seemed understanding and talked to her. "I know this is sudden, but please believe me and help me," I said. The teacher was puzzled by my sudden request, but agreed to stake out a certain location after school, just as I asked. I didn't tell the teacher the details. I had no reason to think she would believe me, but the fact that she agreed to help without any explanation made me think she wasn't an ordinary person either. The next day, the school was in an uproar. The male student teacher was arrested for violating a public nuisance prevention ordinance. The location where the teacher staked out was near the girls' restroom. Within 10 minutes of starting the stakeout, the student teacher appeared, entered the girls' restroom, and installed a video camera. The teacher caught him in the act. Thanks to that, the female students were saved from being secretly filmed, and their dignity was protected. Meanwhile, my sister, who had joined the talent agency, was proudly telling everyone about it. But there were no real lessons or auditions. She only had to pay expensive membership and lesson fees. Then, suddenly, the agency closed down, leaving an empty shell. In short, my sister was scammed. She cried and screamed, directing her anger at me. "It's all because you said weird things. My future is ruined, and it's all your fault." It didn't make any sense, but my sister seemed to truly believe it. Maybe that's the only way she could handle it. For me, it was a disaster and a nuisance. Our parents didn't say such unreasonable things, but their attitude became more distant toward me and more supportive of my sister. I ended up feeling lonely again, as the odd one out. I was happy that I could help everyone at school, but I was terrified that my actions would corner me. That's when I received a call from the teacher who had listened to my story, asking me to come to the staff room. Worried that I would be labeled as strange again, I opened the door to the teacher's staff room. "You knew something like that was going to happen, didn't you?" The teacher asked me in a low voice, without any preamble. Thinking there was no point in pretending, I gathered my courage and told the teacher about my mysterious power. "I thought so. I know there are very few people like you," the teacher said. For the first time, someone showed understanding for my situation. The teacher said they knew someone with a power like mine, and that's why they could understand. Actually, that person is my aunt, and I've been listening to her stories for a long time. You must be worried about a lot of things because of your power. Maybe getting advice from someone who's been in your shoes will help clear your mind. Saying that, the teacher introduced me to the person. The person looked at me with kind eyes and said, "It's natural to be worried, but you don't need to suffer." I was drawn to their gentle yet deep eyes that seemed to see through everything. The person's name was Hannah, and she had the same kind of power as me since she was a child. She had experienced a lot of struggles and hiding herself throughout her life. The stories from my senior who had gone through the same experiences helped me release my worries and doubts. From this day on, my interactions with Hannah began. I called Hannah my mentor, but she just gave a wry smile and said, "Please don't." Thanks to Hannah, or rather my mentor, I changed. I had been living my life quietly, trying to stay unnoticed, but as my awareness grew, I gradually began to live a normal life as an ordinary girl. However, since the incident with the talent agency, I haven't been able to reconcile with my sister. If anything, it feels like we're drifting apart. It's become normal for her not to talk to me, and when she does, it's just to complain or insult me for no reason. I often have no idea what triggers her mood switches. My power couldn't predict my sister's emotional changes either. Just because you got into college doesn't mean you're all that. It's not even that great of a school, and you're so happy-go-lucky, she would say. My sister, who had hoped to get into her top-choice high school, ended up at her second-choice school. Because of that, she got mad when I got into my first-choice college. It's not like I bragged to her, she just dissed me because of her own frustrations. Our parents only tried to appease my upset sister and kept their distance from me, as if telling me to stay away from her. It seemed that my sister didn't like the fact that I had become brighter since meeting my mentor. To my sister, I had to be a dark and gloomy girl who was inferior to her. But my sister is really smart. It was surprising that she failed her high school entrance exams. Of course, she was filled with frustration and poured all of that into studying at her new high school. As a result, she was at the top of her class for all 4 years and got accepted into a prestigious national university on her first try. I got into the most difficult university. Your college doesn't even come close to mine, she boasted. I lightly responded with, "That's true," to my satisfied sister because I knew nothing good would come from getting too involved with her. However, my sister thought that my light reaction was belittling her accomplishments and unleashed a barrage of verbal abuse at me. Both my parents were at their wits' end with my sister, who couldn't be calmed down once she lost her temper. All they could do was watch nervously. They blamed me for causing the trouble and eventually ended up calling me a troublemaker. I wanted to argue back about who the real problem child was, but I always swallowed my words to avoid complicating things further. Setting aside my sister's issues, as I approached college graduation, I had to seriously confront my own career path. I was no longer as introverted as I used to be. I still struggled with socializing and had little confidence in building good relationships with others. My ability allowed me to detect people's negative emotions. While I could sense positive emotions too, it seemed people were more prone to negative ones, which made detecting such negativity painful for me. Throughout my school life, I was tormented by these swirling negative emotions and had come close to losing faith in people. Could someone like me really manage to work at a company? I decided to consult my mentor about this dilemma. I wanted to learn how she had overcome similar issues, as I was sure she had faced them as well. I have experienced the same worries as you. Maybe you should consider doing the kind of work I do, she suggested. My mentor used to work as a fortune teller and a counselor, helping people resolve their problems. She could use her abilities to their fullest extent and contribute to the world and people around her. Also, she was able to work freelance, which meant she didn't have to belong to any organization. This way, there were fewer chances of getting entangled in human relationships or being affected by other people's emotions. "It's the perfect job for people like us," she said. Encouraged by my mentor, I decided to pursue the same line of work. She taught me everything from how to do the job to how to acquire clients. Nowadays, thanks to the internet, it's possible to work from home without any issues. When I told my parents and sister that I would not seek employment after graduation and work from home instead, they responded, "What's that? What kind of job is that?" Seems so dumb. You'll be home all the time. At least make sure to do the housework. Can you even make a living doing that? How will you cover living expenses? Well, as long as you contribute to the household, do whatever you want. While I expected such a response from my parents, it made me feel a little lonely that they didn't support me more. I felt sad thinking about their demands for housework and money. My mood darkened, and so my life working from home began. At first, I didn't have any job requests and struggled day by day. But with my mentor's help, I gradually got the hang of it and started to make a living. For about a year, I couldn't contribute financially to the household, so I focused on doing the housework. My dad seemed unsatisfied, but my mom was relieved and kept him in check. After about a year, when I finally started contributing financially, my dad mocked me by saying, "Oh, finally, you're able to earn some pocket change, huh?" But I could tell he was actually quite satisfied with the money. However, even though I was contributing, the amount of housework I had to do didn't decrease, and our lives remained unchanged. Then, after another 3 years, my sister graduated from college and secured a job at a foreign company. Unlike you, I'm an elite. You're just unemployed, living at the bottom of the barrel. It's so depressing to have you as a sister, she would say. My sister, who had successfully landed a job, started to belittle me for working from home. "What are you even doing working from home? That's just like playing. You're nothing more than a parasite living at home." At times, she'd say, "It's really weird not to work outside. I'm working hard, earning everyone's respect, and now I've been promoted to team leader. My pay is going to increase, and I'm probably earning about 5 times more than you. There's no way a homebody like you can earn that much." My sister, who was promoted to team leader after only a year and a half at the company, kept one-upping me and looking down on me. She boasted about her good salary, but hardly contributed any money to the household and didn't help with the chores at all. Laundry, cleaning, preparing meals, everything was dumped onto Mom and me. When I say Mom and me, Mom mostly left it to me, so I was basically doing everything. Whenever I said to her, "Julie, you should take care of yourself a little. You shouldn't just spend all your money on fun. You should contribute to the household too," she just dismissed me, saying, "You, the unemployed, can handle the chores. I'm saving my money for my future." Our parents also just let her do what she pleased for some inexplicable reason of, "It's Julie, it can't be helped." I was used to my current lifestyle, and it was a comfortable environment for me to work, so I wanted to keep it that way. But I was starting to consider how to take care of myself. Then came the bombshell announcement from my sister. Without any prior warning, both our parents and I were taken aback as she continued, "He's a real elite with an annual income." She sneered at me and added, "Marriage is just a pipe dream for someone unemployed like you, isn't it?" She said she would bring her boyfriend over the next Sunday. With the rapid succession of sudden developments, Sunday came, and we were still reeling. The man my sister brought along looked like a successful young man, impeccably dressed in a sharp suit. "Nice to meet you. My name is Jack," he said. "I would like to ask for your permission to marry Julie," Jack said, greeting us properly and showing good manners. "Isn't he wonderful? Just as I said, I'm going to be so happy with this man," Julie gushed. "So Jack, what do you do for a living?" Dad managed to ask, clearly impressed by Jack's presence. "Yes, I'm currently training at a company that my father knows," Jack replied. We were puzzled by the word training, and then Julie said gleefully, "His father is the president. He's training now to take over the presidency in the future." My sister seemed over the moon about becoming a future president's wife. Afterward, we had various conversations, and Jack left stylishly. There were a few things that made me raise an eyebrow during the conversation, but my parents were thrilled with the high-status man. However, I felt an inexplicable dark shadow from that seemingly refreshing and good-natured man, Jack. It was something only I could sense, so I didn't know how to explain it. I could no longer remain silent, fearing that marrying a man with hidden issues would make my sister unhappy. Julie, you've only been dating him for less than 4 months. You might want to understand him a little more before deciding to get married, I cautioned, driven by a strong gut feeling. Sis, he's an elite and a future CEO. You won't find anyone better than him. Oh, I see, you're jealous, aren't you? You're bitter because you're comparing your life to my happy one. Poor jobless sis, she retorted. Even our parents got angry at me for interfering with Julie's happiness. You're just unemployed, so at the very least, stop interfering with your sister's happiness, they said. It was clear that our parents were hoping to secure a comfortable old age by marrying Julie off to a wealthy man. Frustrated by my inability to effectively communicate my concern about the dark shadow I sensed looming over Julie, my head was spinning. In the meantime, the two got engaged, and a meeting between both families took place. Jack's parents, like him, carried an air of freshness about them, but I felt the same ominous cloud hidden behind them. However, I was unable to convey this danger to my overjoyed sister and parents. Before I knew it, the day of the wedding had arrived. The CEO of our company is attending today's reception. Can you comprehend how much I'm appreciated and anticipated in my company? I guess it's a kind of honor that a shut-in like you wouldn't understand, my sister said gleefully before leaving the house. She always included some derogatory words directed at me. At the wedding ceremony held at a hotel, the couple who pledged eternal love to each other entered the reception hall. Watching my sister, who was beaming with joy, I worried about how long this happiness would last. As my sister mentioned, the CEO made a keynote speech, full of praise for her, which delighted her. Once the speeches were over, food and drinks were served to each table. There were all sorts of delicious-looking dishes, but I started to feel a sense of discomfort. Gradually, I realized that no dishes were being served in front of me. At first, I thought my meal was just late, but other tables were already being served drinks, appetizers, and so on, one after another. Clearly, something was off. Nothing was being delivered to me. People at the same table began to notice this oddity and started whispering among themselves. At that moment, my sister came over to me and whispered into my ear with laughter in her voice. We didn't prepare free meals for the unemployed. After all, it's such a waste to serve such food to a jobless person. You should just eat potato chips at home. Just leave your gift money and go home. This outrageous remark was spoken loudly in my ear, and my ears rang. Jack, sitting at the groom's table, was grinning and nodding. Even our parents, who at first seemed surprised, said, "Well, it's true, Rachel is jobless after all." I was first taken aback. Then a wave of anger surged up within me. I never thought you'd stoop this low, sis. Mom and Dad, this is unacceptable. How could you accept such rudeness? My parents just scowled at me, never bothering to reprimand my sister. Fine, I get it. I'm leaving, but don't come crying to me later, I said. You sound like a sore loser, she shot back. Amidst the chaos of this unbelievable turn of events, a man suddenly stood up. Sorry to interrupt. I'm the groom's brother, Larry. My brother and parents are trash, but it seems the bride is even worse. I can't take it anymore, said the man who introduced himself as Larry. He continued, Dad, your company went bankrupt 5 months ago, didn't it? Pretending to still be a CEO is just a scheme to mooch off the bride and her family. Jack will never become a CEO. He's planning to leech off his wife while pretending otherwise. He's unemployed now. Larry's words caused a commotion among the guests, but my sister was the most heated. What do you mean you lied to me? What do you mean unemployed? She demanded, her face turning from red to blue, her eyes welling up with tears. Our parents, their assumptions proven wrong, began to yell and curse. The anguished cries of my family echoed throughout the venue. The groom and his parents remained silent, looking sulky. Before the ceremony, I had received a confession and apology from Larry and asked him to speak his mind without reservation if something happened during the reception. As my sister was berating Jack with a wrathful face, another man couldn't take it anymore and stood up. It was the president of my sister's company. "Enough already. This is embarrassing. You have no right to criticize the groom. What do you think about your terrible attitude towards your own sister?" The president's angry voice made my sister's face contort in fear. "For one, I didn't attend your wedding for your sake. I wouldn't have come if you weren't the sister of Rachel." Suddenly, my name was mentioned by the president, and my sister's eyes widened in surprise. "Huh? Who are you talking about?" "Rachel is a goddess to many of us business owners, rescuing countless companies from the brink of collapse," he continued. "In fact, with the guidance of my mentor, I have been working as an advisor for corporate revitalization and growth. Starting with fortune-telling and life consultation, I used my abilities to show companies the path they should take. All my advice was spot on, and the companies that sought my help experienced a rapid resurgence in business, achieving a V-shaped recovery. As a result, I had earned titles like teacher and goddess. My sister's company had also consulted with me 5 months ago, and thanks to my advice, it had been reborn as a stronger enterprise. The president, grateful for my assistance, attended the wedding today as well. I had no idea. "You're not just a basement-dwelling, unemployed nobody, are you?" my sister said, finally realizing the truth. Thanks to my thriving career, her assumptions had been shattered. "I now earn several times what you do. Despite contributing significantly to the household income, our parents never seemed to care about me. They thought that money was from Julie." "Oh, we thought Julie provided that money," they said, misunderstanding the situation. There was no way Julie would have been contributing money to the house. The wedding reception turned into a chaotic scene and was called off. Naturally, all the guests were fully refunded their wedding gifts. I've already signed a contract for an apartment under my name. I can't afford it on my own, especially now that he's unemployed, my sister sobbed. Jack retorted, "You're the one who signed the contract. I don't know anything about that." The wedding was a complete disaster, resulting from my sister's malice towards others. She may argue there were reasons for her behavior, but they didn't hold up. Afterward, Julie divorced Jack and claimed alimony. Since Jack was jobless and his parents didn't have much, she couldn't receive much alimony. She barely managed to pay for the wedding venue, let alone the apartment she had contracted. The place that was supposed to be their love nest was never occupied and was canceled. However, the debt didn't simply vanish, and Julie found herself heavily burdened by loans. Moreover, her outrageous behavior at the wedding quickly became known among her colleagues, leading to a rapid decline in her reputation. The CEO had no choice but to demote her. With no place left in the company and having lost her pride as an elite, Julie wanted to quit and run away, but she had to bear the embarrassment for the sake of loan repayment. She continued with a trivial job in a hardly noticeable basement storage room. Jack and his parents, who had failed in their plan to leech off Julie, were now scraping by with occasional day labor. Naturally, Jack's elder brother, Gary, had cut off all ties with his parents and brother. The parents quickly gave up on Julie when she hit rock bottom and tried to cozy up to me instead. To them, I said, "I've had enough of being manipulated by you. I'm cutting ties. Goodbye forever." I declared this and moved out to start a new life in a newly rented apartment. They took in the fallen Julie, who was struggling to make ends meet. Julie's salary was drastically reduced, and she couldn't possibly contribute to the household expenses, of course. I stopped the money I was contributing to the house as well. Without my financial help and unable to lower their standard of living, our parents quickly became exhausted and struggled every day to make ends meet. They were panting and stressed, trying to maintain the lifestyle they had grown used to, but without the necessary income, it became a daily challenge. On the other hand, my work was thriving. I was able to guide many companies and individuals in the right direction, using my abilities to help them succeed. My reputation grew, and more clients sought my advice. This success brought me a sense of fulfillment and financial stability. It felt good to finally be appreciated for my skills and to see the positive impact I was making on others' lives. After the wedding incident, I started dating Larry. He had been so honest and brave during that chaotic time, and we grew close. He recently proposed to me, and I accepted. If everything goes well, marriage could be in our future. Larry is a man of pure heart, with no dark shadows lurking within him. Unlike the people my sister had surrounded herself with, Larry was genuine and kind. I'm looking forward to building a happy life with Larry. Together, we dream of a future filled with love, mutual respect, and understanding. With him by my side, I feel a sense of hope and excitement for what lies ahead. We've talked about our plans, our dreams, and how we want to support each other in everything we do. As I reflect on everything that has happened, I feel a mix of emotions. I am relieved to have cut ties with my parents and sister, who never appreciated me. I am proud of the person I have become, despite the challenges I faced, and I'm grateful for Larry, who has brought light and love into my life. Looking forward, I see a bright future. I am excited about the possibility of marriage with Larry and the life we will build together. With him, I know I will never have to hide who I am or feel unappreciated. Our love and partnership are based on honesty and mutual support, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for us.